Most men prepare for the wrong war. They sharpen their blades, raise their voices, make threats, draw lines in the dirt, and wait for a fight that will never come on their terms. They believe that strength is loud. They believe that power announces itself. And that belief, that single foolish belief, is the reason they lose. Not on a battlefield, not in a public confrontation, but slowly, quietly, methodically, by a man who never once raised his hand against them. This is the war kings wage, the war you cannot see until it is already over. Machiavelli understood something that most men spend their entire lives refusing to accept. He understood that real power does not fight, it maneuvers. It does not threaten, it positions. It does not react with emotion, it responds with calculation. The prince who masters psychological warfare does not need an army. He needs patience, silence, and the cold intelligence to turn his enemy's own mind into a weapon against them. Because the most dangerous battlefield in existence is not a field, not a boardroom, not a street corner. It is the 6 inches between your enemy's ears. While your enemy is busy performing strength for the crowd, you are already 3 moves ahead. While he is building alliances loudly, you are quietly dissolving them. While he is watching the door, you already own the room. This is not cruelty for its own sake. This is surgical. This is the cold science of dominance that separated kings from peasants across every century of recorded human history. If this is the kind of knowledge they never wanted you to have, drop "I wage war in silence" in the comments right now. Let's begin. Law 1. Never reveal your real move. The first law of psychological war is the one most men violate before the battle even begins. They talk, they explain, they justify their moves, telegraph their intentions, and hand their enemy a map to everything they are planning. They confuse transparency with strength. They believe that telling the world what they are going to do somehow makes them more powerful, more credible, more feared. It does not. It makes them predictable. And a predictable man is already a defeated man. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who reveals his mind to others gives them a weapon they did not earn. Every word you speak about your plans is a brick you hand your enemy to build a wall against you. Every time you explain your next move, you give someone else the opportunity to be there first, to block it, to corrupt it, to redirect it entirely. The kings who survived, the ones who built empires that outlasted their enemies by centuries, were men of devastating discretion. They moved in silence. They acted without warning. And by the time their enemies understood what was happening, it was already done. This is not deception for sport. This is strategic concealment as a form of armor. When no one knows your real move, no one can stop it. When no one can predict your direction, no one can place themselves in your path. You become ungovernable. You become a force that cannot be prepared for, cannot be neutralized, cannot be outmaneuvered, because the very nature of your power is its invisibility. Your silence is not weakness. Your silence is a drawn weapon that your enemy cannot see coming until it is already at his throat. Start practicing this today. Stop announcing what you are building. Stop explaining what you are ending. Stop giving people the satisfaction of understanding your mind before you have already executed your plan. Let your actions be the only announcement. Let your results be the only explanation. Let your silence do what your words never could. Make them uncertain, make them anxious, make them afraid of what they cannot see. The man who controls information controls outcomes. The man who controls outcomes controls everything. Law 2. Make them doubt themselves before they doubt you. The second law is more dangerous than the first, because this one does not just protect you, it actively dismantles your enemy from the inside. It requires no confrontation, no aggression, no visible effort whatsoever. It requires only a precise, calculated understanding of human psychology and the cold patience to let it work. The law is this: before your enemy can move against you, you make him question himself so deeply that he becomes his own greatest obstacle. This is not manipulation in the cheap sense of the word. This is architecture. You are building doubt inside another man's mind, the way an engineer builds a crack inside a dam. Small, invisible at first, but spreading silently until the entire structure collapses under its own weight. Machiavelli understood that the most effective way to neutralize a threat is not to attack it directly, but to erode the confidence that powers it. A man who doubts his own judgment cannot lead. A man who questions his own allies cannot organize. A man who second-guesses his every decision cannot act decisively. And a man who cannot act decisively has already surrendered, even if he does not yet know it. You do this through strategic subtlety, a well-placed question that makes him reconsider his position, a calm, quiet observation that highlights an inconsistency in his thinking, praise delivered to his rivals in spaces where he can hear it, silence when he expects your reaction, indifference when he expects your attention. These are not dramatic gestures, they are surgical insertions of uncertainty into the operating system of another man's mind. And once doubt takes root in a man, it grows without your help. It feeds on itself. It spreads to every decision he makes, every alliance he considers, every move he attempts. While he is paralyzed inside his own head, you are moving freely. While he is fighting an invisible enemy he cannot name, which is himself, you are positioning, building, consolidating. This is the cold genius of psychological warfare. You never touched him. You never threatened him. You simply created the conditions for him to destroy himself, and then you stepped aside and watched it happen. Drop "I wage war in silence" in the comments if you fight smarter, not louder. Law 3. Control the narrative before your enemy writes it for you. The third law is where psychological war becomes an art form. Because this law operates not on the battlefield, not in the boardroom, not in any private space between you and your enemy. It operates in the minds of everyone watching. It operates in the court of perception, where reputations are built and destroyed not by truth, but by whoever tells the story first, loudest, and most convincingly. And if you are not controlling that story, someone else already is. Machiavelli was ruthlessly clear on this. He understood that a prince could be virtuous in private and still be destroyed in public if he allowed others to define him. Perception is not a side effect of power. It is the foundation of it. The man who controls how he is seen controls how he is treated. The man who controls how his enemy is seen controls how his enemy is received. This is not spin. This is not propaganda for its own sake. This is the deliberate, disciplined management of reality as it exists in the minds of the people whose loyalty, fear, and respect determine outcomes in your world. Before your enemy can frame you as a threat, you frame him as irrelevant. Before he can paint you as weak, you have already established in the minds of every observer that his judgment cannot be trusted. You do not do this through open attacks or visible campaigns. That would expose your hand. You do it through positioning, through association, through the quiet, consistent crafting of a narrative that precedes every room you enter and follows every room you leave. Your reputation becomes a weapon that works even when you are absent. It fights battles you do not have to show up to. It closes doors in your enemy's face before he even reaches them. And when your enemy finally attempts to strike, when he tries to damage your name, question your character, or rally others against you, he finds that the ground has already shifted beneath him. The people he expected to recruit are already aligned with your version of reality. The allies he counted on have already received a different story. He is throwing punches at a shadow, exhausting himself against a narrative he had no hand in building and no power to dismantle. This is the invisible fortress that surrounds the man who masters perception. Not walls of stone, walls of story, walls of image, walls of carefully constructed truth that bend reality in his favor before the enemy even arrives. Control the narrative, or become a character in someone else's. Law 4. Use silence as a weapon they cannot disarm. The fourth law is the one that separates the truly dangerous man from every other man in the room. It is not a tactic you deploy occasionally. It is not a tool you pick up when the situation demands it. It is a permanent state of being, a discipline so deeply embedded in your character that it becomes indistinguishable from who you are. And it is this: silence. Not the silence of a man who has nothing to say. The silence of a man who has everything to say and chooses not to. The silence of a man who understands that in a world full of people desperately performing, constantly explaining, endlessly justifying, the one who says nothing holds all the power. Most men are terrified of silence. It makes them uncomfortable, anxious, exposed. When silence enters a room, weak men rush to fill it. They talk to ease the tension. They explain to reduce the uncertainty. They offer information, opinions, reactions, anything to break the unbearable weight of saying nothing. And every single time they do this, they hand their power to whoever remained quiet. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure. Silence is a mirror that forces the other person to confront their own insecurity, their own assumptions, their own fear. And when a man is confronting his own fear, he is not thinking clearly. He is not strategizing. He is reacting. And a man who is reacting is a man you already control. Machiavelli understood that the prince who speaks less is feared more, not because silence implies weakness or disengagement, but because it implies depth. It implies calculation. It implies that beneath the surface, something vast and cold and purposeful is moving, and your enemy cannot see it, cannot measure it, cannot prepare for it. Your silence tells them that you are not moved by what moves ordinary men, that their provocations do not reach you, that their opinions of you carry no weight in the architecture of your thinking, and nothing destabilizes an enemy faster than the realization that he cannot get inside your head. Practice this with surgical precision. When someone challenges you publicly, do not rush to respond. Let the silence sit. Let it expand. Let it fill every corner of the room until the challenger is drowning in the discomfort of your non-reaction. When someone attempts to provoke an emotional response, give them stillness instead. When someone spreads information designed to make you panic, move slower, speak less, and appear entirely unbothered. Because the man who cannot be provoked cannot be manipulated. The man who cannot be manipulated cannot be controlled. And the man who cannot be controlled is the most dangerous man in any environment he inhabits. Your silence is intelligence gathering. Your silence is strategic positioning. Your silence is a form of dominance so refined, so complete, that it requires no effort to maintain once it becomes your nature. While other men are busy revealing themselves with every word they speak, you are watching, learning, cataloging, and preparing. You are building a picture of every weakness, every insecurity, every pressure point, all while giving away absolutely nothing in return. Silence is not the absence of war. Silence is how kings wage it. Drop "I wage war in silence" in the comments if this is already who you are becoming. Law 5. Isolate your enemy without ever touching him. The fifth law is where psychological warfare reaches its most elegant and most devastating expression. Because this law requires no confrontation, no raised voice, no visible aggression of any kind. It requires only patience, precision, and a cold understanding of how human social structures actually function beneath the surface of what people pretend they are. The law is this: you do not destroy your enemy directly. You dissolve the network that sustains him. You remove the alliances that protect him. You quietly, methodically, invisibly detach every person, every resource, every source of support from around him until he is standing completely alone in the middle of a battlefield he does not even realize has already been emptied. And then you watch as a man without allies, without resources, without a single reliable voice in his corner, destroys himself through sheer isolation. Machiavelli wrote that a prince's greatest vulnerability is never his enemy. It is the men around his enemy. The supporters, the advisors, the allies, the silent sympathizers who provide the infrastructure that makes opposition possible. Strip a man of his infrastructure and you strip him of his power. Strip him of his power and you strip him of his relevance. Strip him of his relevance and you have achieved total victory without a single direct confrontation. This is the architecture of invisible war. This is what separates the strategic mind from the reactive one. The ability to see not just the man standing in front of you, but the entire web of relationships and dependencies that keep him standing, and the cold patience to dismantle that web one thread at a time. You begin by understanding who your enemy needs. Who does he rely on for validation? Who provides him with information? Who amplifies his voice? Who gives him credibility in spaces where credibility matters? Once you have mapped this network with precision, you begin working on it, not aggressively, not visibly, but through the slow, deliberate cultivation of those same people in your own direction. You offer them something your enemy cannot: better association, cleaner positioning, more strategic value. You make yourself the more attractive orbit without ever explicitly asking anyone to leave his. People move toward power naturally. Your job is simply to become the more obvious source of it and let gravity do the rest. Meanwhile, your enemy begins to notice the shift. The calls that used to come quickly now arrive late, or not at all. The rooms that used to open for him now require effort. The allies who used to speak on his behalf are suddenly unavailable, suddenly neutral, suddenly distant in ways he cannot fully explain. He starts to feel it, that cold, creeping sensation of ground disappearing beneath his feet. And because he cannot see the hand that is moving against him, because there is no visible enemy to confront, no direct attack to respond to, he begins to turn inward. He starts to question himself. He starts to suspect the people closest to him. He starts making paranoid decisions, erratic moves, desperate plays for relevance, all of which accelerate his own collapse. You never had to lift a finger. You simply engineered the conditions for his self-destruction and maintained your composure while he unraveled. This is the coldest truth of psychological warfare, that the most complete victories are the ones your enemy never even recognizes as defeats until it is far too late to course correct. He will spend years trying to understand what happened, trying to identify the moment things turned against him, trying to find the enemy who dismantled him. And he will never find that enemy, because that enemy moved like shadow, like water, like silence itself, present everywhere, visible nowhere, leaving no trace except the absolute completeness of the outcome. Isolate without touching, dismantle without confronting, destroy without fighting. This is the law that kings live by and that history remembers them for. The man who masters this law does not make enemies, he makes examples. Law 6. Never react. Respond from a position of total control. The 6th law is the one that will be tested every single day of your life, not occasionally, not in moments of obvious crisis. Every single day. Because the world is full of people, enemies, rivals, insecure men, threatened egos, who will deliberately, consistently, and sometimes unconsciously attempt to pull a reaction out of you. They will provoke you publicly. They will disrespect you in spaces where others are watching. They will say things designed to destabilize your composure, challenge your reputation, and force you into an emotional response that hands them control of the entire situation. And the moment you react, the moment you allow emotion to drive your response, you have already lost. Not because your feelings are wrong, but because a reactive man is a readable man, and a readable man is a controllable man. And a controllable man will never, in any room he enters, be the most powerful presence in it. Machiavelli understood that the prince who is easily provoked is a prince whose enemies hold the strings. Because provocation is not an attack, it is a test. It is your enemy reaching into your psychology and pulling levers to see which ones move you, which ones shake you, which ones make you abandon your strategy and descend into chaos. Every time you react emotionally to a provocation, You are handing your enemy a detailed map of your psychological vulnerabilities. You are showing him exactly which buttons to press, exactly how much pressure it takes to destabilize you, exactly where the cracks in your armor are located. And a smart enemy will take that information and use it with surgical precision every single time he needs to neutralize you. The man who responds from control operates from an entirely different plane of existence. He does not deny that he feels. He simply refuses to perform his feelings for an audience that will use them against him. He processes internally with the cold efficiency of a general reviewing battlefield intelligence. He takes the provocation, strips it of its emotional charge, identifies the strategic intent behind it, and then, and only then, decides whether a response is even necessary, and if so, what form that response should take. Sometimes the most devastating response is complete indifference. Sometimes it is a single calm sentence delivered without heat, without urgency, without any signal that the provocation reached him at all. Sometimes it is a delayed action taken days or weeks later, in a context his enemy never anticipated, that makes it unmistakably clear that the provocation was noted, catalogued, and answered on your terms rather than his. This is what true emotional mastery looks like in practice. It is not the absence of emotion. It is the complete and total subordination of emotion to strategic intent. It is feeling everything and showing only what serves your purpose. It is being moved internally while appearing immovable externally. And the effect this has on everyone around you, allies, enemies, observers, neutrals, is profound and immediate. Because when men see that you cannot be rattled, they stop trying to rattle you. When they see that provocation slides off you like water, they begin to fear the depth of your composure. They begin to wonder what kind of man feels no visible pressure, shows no visible weakness, and moves through confrontation the way water moves through rock, not by force, but by patient, unstoppable persistence that wears everything down eventually. Your composure is your most visible form of power. It communicates more than any speech, any threat, any display of aggression ever could. It tells the room that you have already survived worse than whatever they are offering. It tells your enemy that his best weapon, emotional disruption, has no purchase on you whatsoever. It tells every observer that the man standing before them is not operating on the same frequency as ordinary men. He is operating from somewhere colder, deeper, more calculated, a place where reactions do not exist, only responses, and every response is a chess move in a game that was designed long before this moment arrived. Never react, respond. But respond from a position so controlled, so deliberate, so absolutely certain of its own power that your enemy feels the weight of your composure like a physical force pressing down on every move he attempts to make. Let him exhaust himself against your stillness. Let him break himself against your silence. Let him destroy his own credibility in front of every watching eye while you stand unmoved, unreadable, and entirely in control of the only thing that has ever truly mattered in any war, yourself. The man who masters himself masters everything, and the man who masters everything needs no battlefield to prove it. Law 7. Make your strength invisible and your weakness undetectable. The seventh law is the one that the most dangerous men in history have lived by in absolute secrecy. It is the law that allowed certain kings to reign for decades while surrounded by enemies who genuinely believed they had the upper hand. It is the law that permitted certain strategists to accumulate power so vast, so deeply embedded in the structures around them, that by the time anyone thought to challenge it, the challenge itself was already futile. The law is this: you never display the full measure of your strength, and you never allow anyone to accurately locate your weakness. You exist in a permanent state of strategic ambiguity, where your enemies are always slightly uncertain about what you are truly capable of, always slightly miscalculating the resources available to you, always slightly off in their assessment of where you are vulnerable. And that permanent uncertainty is itself the most powerful defensive weapon you will ever possess. Machiavelli was precise about this. He wrote that the prince who displays all of his power invites challenges from men who believe they can match it. Because the moment your enemy can measure you accurately, he can plan against you accurately. The moment he knows your ceiling, he knows what he needs to surpass it. The moment he identifies your weakness with confidence, he has a target, and a man with a clear target is a man with a plan. Your goal is to deny him that clarity permanently. Not through dishonesty, not through theatrical performances of false strength, but through the disciplined management of what you reveal, when you reveal it, and to whom. You show enough to command respect, you conceal enough to command fear, and you maintain the space between those two things with the precision of a master architect who understands that the most important part of any structure is not what is visible, it is what is hidden beneath the foundation. The display of invisible strength begins with restraint. You have resources, do not enumerate them. You have allies, do not parade them. You have capabilities that your enemy has not yet witnessed. Do not preview them in moments of ego or insecurity. Every time you feel the urge to demonstrate your power in order to feel validated, recognized, or respected, you must understand that urge for what it truly is. A weakness dressed in the costume of strength. Real power does not need an audience. Real power does not need confirmation. Real power sits quietly in the knowledge of what it is capable of, entirely unbothered by whether anyone else in the room has correctly estimated it. Let them underestimate you. Let them believe they have a clearer picture of your capabilities than they actually do. Because the enemy who underestimates you walks directly into traps he does not see. The enemy who overestimates you spends his energy preparing for threats that never arrive. Either way, you win. The concealment of weakness is an equally sophisticated discipline. Every man has vulnerabilities, pressures, dependencies, fears, relationships, resources that are finite or fragile. The question is never whether these vulnerabilities exist. The question is whether your enemy can find them, map them, and exploit them with precision. Your job is to ensure that he cannot. This means never complaining publicly about your struggles, never visibly reacting to the areas where pressure actually reaches you, never allowing the people closest to your vulnerabilities to become liabilities through careless trust or emotional overinvestment. It means building redundancies around your weakest points so that even if an enemy identifies a vulnerability and moves against it, the damage is contained, the recovery is swift, and the window of exploitation is so narrow that by the time he attempts to move through it, it has already closed. A man who presents an unreadable surface, strong where his enemy expects weakness, restrained where his enemy expects display, calm where his enemy expects pressure, becomes something genuinely terrifying to those who study him. He cannot be modeled, he cannot be predicted, he cannot be reduced to a formula that produces reliable countermeasures. He exists outside the strategic calculations of ordinary men, because ordinary men can only plan against what they can see, what they can measure, what they can confirm, and this man gives them nothing to confirm, nothing to measure, nothing to see except the outcomes, which always, without exception, favor him. Drop "I wage war in silence" in the comments right now if you understand that your greatest power is the power no one knows you have, because the kings who lasted were never the loudest men in the room. They were the most unreadable. They were the most unpredictable. They were the men whose enemies spent entire lifetimes trying to locate a weakness that was never left exposed, never left unguarded, never left available for exploitation. And by the time those enemies finally admitted they had found nothing, the war was already over, the outcome already sealed, and the king was already onto the next move in a game his enemies never even knew they were playing. Make your strength invisible, make your weakness undetectable, and let the mystery of what you truly are become the most powerful weapon in your entire arsenal. Law 8. Patience is the deadliest weapon in psychological war. The 8th law is the one that most men will read, nod at, claim to understand, and then immediately violate the moment pressure arrives. Because patience, True, cold, strategic patience is not a passive state. It is not the comfortable waiting of a man with nothing better to do. It is not the resignation of someone who has run out of options and is simply enduring the present while hoping for a better future. Real strategic patience is an act of supreme violence against your own impulse to move before the moment is right. It is the daily, deliberate, ruthless suppression of the urge to act prematurely, to strike too early, to reveal your hand before the board has been set in precisely the configuration that guarantees your victory. And it is the single most difficult discipline any man will ever attempt to master. Because everything in your biology, everything in your psychology, everything in the social world around you is constantly screaming at you to do something, to move now, to act before it is too late. And the king looks at all of that noise, all of that pressure, all of that urgency, and waits. Machiavelli studied the rise and fall of princes across centuries of Italian political history and identified one pattern above all others that separated the men who built lasting power from the men who burned brightly and collapsed quickly. It was not intelligence. It was not resources. It was not even strategic brilliance in the conventional sense. It was timing, the ability to identify the precise moment when action would produce maximum impact and minimum resistance, and the iron discipline to refuse to act until that moment arrived, regardless of how long the wait required, regardless of how uncomfortable the interim became, regardless of how many lesser men around them were moving and acting and generating visible results that created the illusion of progress while building nothing of lasting substance. The patient prince watched all of this, filed all of this, and moved only when the geometry of the situation aligned perfectly with his desired outcome. This is the discipline you must build into the deepest architecture of your character, not as a strategy you deploy selectively, but as a permanent operating principle that governs every significant decision you make. When you identify an enemy who needs to be neutralized, you do not strike the moment the opportunity first appears. You wait, you watch, you allow the situation to develop, allow your enemy to reveal more of himself, allow the landscape around him to shift in ways that create openings far more devastating than anything available to you in the early stages of the conflict. Because the first opportunity is rarely the best opportunity, it is almost always a test. A visible, accessible, tempting window that your enemy has either deliberately created to expose your intentions or that exists precisely because the situation has not yet matured into the configuration that will make your move irreversible and complete. Premature action is the signature mistake of the insecure man. He moves because waiting feels like weakness. He strikes because inaction feels like surrender. He cannot tolerate the ambiguity of a situation that has not yet resolved, cannot sit with the discomfort of watching his enemy operate freely while he holds his position. And so he moves too soon, with insufficient preparation, into terrain that has not been properly mapped, against a target that has not been sufficiently weakened. And he achieves a partial result at best, a catastrophic exposure of his capabilities and intentions at worst. He has shown his hand. He has spent resources. He has revealed the direction of his threat. And his enemy, now warned, now informed, now fully aware of what is coming, adjusts and prepares and fortifies in ways that make the next move exponentially more difficult and costly. The patient man makes none of these errors. He sits in the discomfort of waiting with the absolute serenity of someone who knows that time itself is working on his behalf. He understands that every day his enemy operates without opposition is a day his enemy is accumulating the very behaviors, decisions, alliances, and vulnerabilities that will eventually be used to dismantle him completely. He understands that people reveal themselves fully only when they believe they are unobserved and unchallenged. He understands that the longer he waits, the more complete his picture of the enemy becomes, the more thoroughly he can map the terrain, the more precisely he can identify the single point of maximum leverage that will produce total collapse rather than temporary damage. He waits with the cold certainty of a man who already knows the outcome, He waits with the discipline of someone who understands that the greatest victories in the history of human conflict were not won by the fastest men, or the most aggressive men, or the most visibly powerful men. They were won by the men who outlasted everyone else. The men who were still standing, still thinking, still moving with precision and purpose, long after their enemies had exhausted themselves in the furious, undisciplined, emotionally driven sprint that impatient men always mistake for strategy. Patience is not waiting for something to happen. Patience is the active, intelligent, ruthlessly disciplined management of time as a weapon, understanding that in the long game, the man who controls his timing controls everything, and the man who controls everything does not need to fight. He simply needs to wait until his enemy has no choice but to fall. Your enemies will tire. Your enemies will overextend. Your enemies will make the mistakes that impatient men always make when they are not being actively challenged and their ego begins to mistake comfort for safety. And when that moment arrives, when the geometry finally aligns, when the window opens into precisely the configuration that makes your move devastating, complete, and irreversible, you will not hesitate. You will not rush. You will move with the calm, certain, unhurried precision of a man who has been ready for this moment for a very long time, and it will be over before your enemy even realizes it has begun. Patience is not passive. Patience is the deadliest weapon in the arsenal of psychological war, and the man who masters it masters time itself. Last part, the king you were always meant to become. This is where it ends, and this is where you begin. Everything you have heard in this video is not theory. It is not philosophy for the sake of philosophy. It is not intellectual entertainment designed to make you feel sophisticated for 30 minutes before you return to the same patterns, the same reactions, the same powerless version of yourself that walked in here before this started. These are operational laws, tested across centuries of real power, real war, real consequence. Laws that separated the men who built empires from the men who became footnotes in someone else's story, and now they belong to you. But knowledge without application is just noise. The man who listens to this and does nothing has wasted his time. The man who listens to this and changes one decision, one behavior, one deeply ingrained reaction, that man has begun a transformation that compounds daily until the person he becomes is unrecognizable to the person he was. That is the real psychological war, not the one against your enemies, the one against the weaker version of yourself that still flinches, still reacts, still seeks validation from a world that respects only those who have mastered themselves completely. You are not here by accident. You found this channel because something in you already knew that ordinary thinking produces ordinary outcomes, and you were never built for ordinary. Drop "I wage war in silence" in the comments one final time. Let every man watching know exactly what kind of mind just sat through this entire video. If this forged something in you, like this video, subscribe to Machiavellian Mind, and turn on notifications. Because what comes next will go even deeper. The war begins now, and you are already 3 moves ahead.